Hey, everybody, just wanted to take a quick minute at the beginning of the show and tell you about all of the great things we've got going on this season. We've got the Sleeper Wire Pro-Am again, and we've got 4 listener leagues this year where you can win signed, authentic jerseys from pristine auction. We've got a phenomenal draft kit, which can be pre-ordered on our Patreon page, where we are giving a lot back to you guys just for helping support the show, but more importantly, helping us make a difference in people's lives. More details to come inside the show.
What do you mean when you say dynasty?
Make sure to tune into the new episode of the Dynasty Wire show. Draft Genius interviews J.J. Zacharyson of Number Fire, also of Fantasy Pros, and the author of the fantasy football strategy book, The Late Round Quarterback. They talk late round or undrafted quarterback values, Chubb and the Browns offense, Prescott, and if he improves, Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, running back committees including the Packers, the Raiders, the Colts, and New England, and they get into some seriously deep sleepers. Only on the new episode of the Dynasty Wire show with your host, Draft Genius, on the Sleeper Wire Network.
See, the king, stay the king, all right?
Sleepers. Yoda this is. Powerful you have become. But the dark side I sense in you. I sense used other draft kits you have. Once down the dark side, forever will it dominate your destiny. A dark place we find ourselves in. And a little more knowledge lights our way. The light of Sleeper Wire Draft Genius. Get the Draft Genius from Sleeper Wire. Passed on what they have learned. The Draft Genius is here. Scroll up the force it is. Pre-order now by Sleeper Wire Patreon going to. Yes. Do or do not. There is no drop.
I'm ready for us.
Welcome to the Sleeper Wire show. I'm producer Steve. With me today is Lucas, and on today's show we got a very special guest. We got Brett Kollmann. He has a fantastic YouTube channel where he breaks down film and analyzes all sorts of players, teams, potential, and more. So he is going to give you some very interesting insight as we talk with him about the guys you're going to want to draft for your fantasy team this year based on film study, which is something that in Sleeper Wire, we don't really have a film guy. We got a guy who looks at college players. We got a guy who looks at stats. We got a guy who looks at, overall teams and offensive lines. But this will bring a little something new to the table here. And we're also going to get you all the details to play in our Pro-Am League against pros from the fantasy industry and to play against us in the Listener League. So that'll all be part of the show today. Let's get it started. All right, Lucas, how you doing, my man? Welcome back to the show. Another week, another show. How you feeling?
Feeling pretty good right now. Really excited to have Brett on here with us.
Me too. I've been into this guy's YouTube videos since last season when I found him, and I tried to get you all to watch some of them. I've been posting them on the Facebook page and sending them to you. I hope you guys are taking a look because they're real interesting. They got great value, production value, and he really goes into some film about a lot of players that we talk about on the show every week, guys that we like, guys that we don't like. So it'll be good to talk with him. I wanted to remind the listeners, you're going out to a fantasy convention next month. Tell them about that.
Absolutely. July 13th through 15th is the National Fantasy Football Convention in Fort Worth. And you need to come out and see me. Matthew Berry just announced he's going. There's over 200 NFL players or previous NFL players that are going. Ezekiel Elliott, Kareem Hunt, Dez Bryant, Mahomes is going, and a ton of other guys you can go and check out. They have that full list. But this is not just a fantasy football thing. It's a conglomerate of anyone who cares about the NFL is going to go to this. So I am so stoked to be there.
So if you go out that way and you see Lucas, I'm sure you're going to be in like a Sleeper Wire shirt or something.
I have a Sleeper Wire shirt. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be running around meeting people. Please come up, shake my hand, and tell me how much you love fantasy football.
Yeah, and get a picture with Lucas. You know what? We'll do something special. If you get a selfie with Lucas, we'll have a prize for you. I'll announce it on next week's show. If you end up going and you manage to do that, there'll be a prize for you. Also, if you get a picture of Dez Bryant in his Aramark shirt, the vending people, the concession stand people, because, I don't think he has a job yet, so he might be making a little extra money at the convention with that red shirt on. Get a picture of him. working hard back there, cooking up the hot dogs and whatnot. That wasn't funny? I thought that was funny.
I was just waiting for it. Signing $10 an autograph. I heard that's what he's doing. It's down a little bit, so make sure to bring your. Should you bring a Cowboys football? Yeah, you probably still should bring a Cowboys football for him to sign.
Why not? Why not? All right, I don't have many jokes. That was the one I had. So let's jump now into the interview with Brett Kollmann.
Texas tatted on my arm, got Houston on my back. Cause I love the city I'm from. Hands up if you feel that.
All right, I'd like to welcome to the show now Brett Kollmann. His YouTube channel has over 9 million views. He recently topped the 100,000 subscriber mark. Also, he's a Texans fan, so I had to get him in for my own personal reasons here. So if you like what you hear today in the next 45 minutes to an hour, you can find his YouTube channel. Go to YouTube /C/Brett, BrettKollmann, or just search for Brett Kollmann on YouTube. He's also on Twitter @Brett Kollmann. And you can support his channel if you go to Patreon and just search for Brett Kollmann or click a link in any of his video descriptions. Brett, welcome to the show.
Thank you guys for having me on. Excited to be here.
Great. Well, we're excited to have you. So I want to first get in a little bit about like your background and stuff. You worked for the NFL Network. You were part of the production crew for Red Zone. I can only imagine that was a weekly adrenaline ride. And I mean, I get a bit high just watching it. So when you're behind the scenes, what's the come down like after a typical work day on Sunday? Do you even sleep on Sunday?
Mean, that was the most. I mean, I did live TV for several years. That was by far the most exciting and most fun show I ever worked on in my life. I did basically every show you can think of at the network in my time there. I started as an intern in college and worked there after I graduated as well for a few years on the back end doing production work, whether it was doing highlights or worked on Game Day Morning. I did Total Access. I did my favorite show in the offseason that I worked on, Pat to the Draft. But really nothing compares to Red Zone, like at all. It is so fast-paced, so breakneck. It's 7 hours commercial-free. So, when you think about, oh, man, how did they do that show in the back end? There's no commercials. You just kind of do it. There's no breaks. Somebody comes in and gives you a box lunch halfway through, and you're kind of, typing in stats as you're eating with one hand, and it's insane, absolutely insane. But man, those were some of the most fun Sundays I ever had in my life. I loved it.
Yeah, and now you kind of go on your own way. You're putting a ton of energy and time into this YouTube channel, and I mean that took guts to go on your own. But it looks like it's paying off. What's been like a milestone or event that happened with the YouTube channel that you felt like, yeah, I made the right decision to do this?
I think definitely hitting the 100K, it finally kind of sunk in that it's working, it's happening. I can do this for a living. I can do it long term. I don't have to go back into TV because, man, that commute from Orange County to LA is brutal. My record in one day of driving was 6.5 hours, by the way. So that definitely made it a little bit harder to do. But, once I hit that 100K, it was almost like a moment of relief because YouTube, it's a very scary industry. You're just scared all day, every day that what you're going to do isn't working, or that your numbers are going down and they're going up, and it's very volatile because everything kind of depends on the algorithm and all that kind of stuff. So it's very terrifying to kind of do something on your own and build a brand on your own. But getting that little bit of validation from hitting that number, it really helped.
Well, I mean, you came from that terrifying, energy-filled experience at the network. Now you're doing it for your own stuff, but I imagine it's a bit scarier because now it's like your livelihood depends on your YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, it's a whole different kind of fear because when you're at Red Zone, it's like an exciting fear, whereas when you're doing YouTube and all of your income and your ability to eventually get a house and raise a family, that's more like an existential fear that's always in the background. Right. So it's interesting, but it also keeps you motivated, and it also makes the payoffs that much better, when you can make it and when people enjoy the product you do, and it's much more gratifying, I would say.
All right. Yeah, you talk about motivation. I kind of want to ask you about that just because we're doing this podcast. We've been doing it for about 4 years. Everything Sleepwire does was started as sort of a passion project with the goal to raise money for a buddy who's sick. And we're kind of at that point now where we're like, we want to set a goal to get to the next level. We're not quite sure what that is. We have ideas, but for your channel and for what you're doing, is there a goal are you at that point where you have a goal now for the future? Are you looking to get into coaching or get your content picked up by a television network or something? Or is it just, this is what you're doing right now, you're staying focused on this?
Yeah, I've been asked that by a few different people, and all from different angles in terms of, do you want to get back into TV and get your own show? Do you want to be a scout? Do you want to coach? Do you want to run a camp? And right now, I kind of just like entertaining people. I like teaching people. I like knowing that I'm going to be able to keep doing this, financially, so that I can keep making the content that I like to make and that people like to watch. And right now, I'm pretty comfortable just in terms of, picking a concept, picking a player, picking a team, and just really doing a deep dive into it every single week, and people seem to enjoy it, so I'm good for now. Whatever happens in the next 5 years, I have no idea, but for at least the 2018 season, I'm feeling pretty good.
Cool. All right. Well, you really made me feel good by telling me my question had been asked a bunch of times by a bunch of different people. Thanks. I thought I had written some good questions, and now I don't know what to do. No, it's all good, man. All right, let's get into why I brought you here. I've been a fan of your videos. I found them last season. I love the production value, the depth of the analysis. You put good music behind it, the slow motion highlight film. All that stuff comes together to really show that in the final project you've done your research and put a lot of time. I think I heard you once say you put 60 to 70 hours into some of these videos. Is that right?
About on average, yeah. The Jimmy Garoppolo one took about 80. I don't know. I don't think I slept much that entire week, but that was one of my longer and more labor-intensive videos, but on average, it's somewhere between 60 and 70.
I tell our listeners that when you want fantasy advice from people, look for the people that eat, sleep, live, die, wake up, and go to bed thinking about football. They're the ones that give you the most in-depth advice, and so that's why we brought you on, because we want to give our listeners some players and situations that they can use to win championships this year. So, guys, get your pens and pencils out. I'm going to be referencing a lot of Brett's videos in these topics, so afterwards you can go to his channel on YouTube and watch the full video and get some more info. Let's jump into some team and player breakdowns right now. Brett, Lucas, I'm going to let you guys just kind of chew on these topics. I'll just give you some players, some teams, and some questions, and you guys get into it. So let's start with the Tennessee Titans. So in one of the most recent videos, you focused on the Titans offense. You said they're equipped to break out this year. Most people we talk to, a lot of us included, are kind of down on Derrick Henry, especially when Deion Lewis joined the team. What's your take on Henry this year?
I think he's going to be their lead back, and I know Lewis is going to get carries just because that by the nature of them signing him, we know that they have a plan for him. But what's interesting about the Henry and Lewis dynamic is it's kind of the opposite of what you would expect. Henry is the bigger back, but he's really a better edge runner, whereas Lewis is smaller, but he's much better in between the tackles. And that's mainly just because of their different physical skill sets. Henry's not really like a stop-start kind of weave between traffic when gap runs don't get blocked correctly kind of back. He's more of a outside zone, get him to the edge, toss, crack, get him to the edge. His yards per carry numbers are drastically different when you look at him on the edges versus inside the tackles. And it's just because of how his skill set is. He's not a slasher, and he's not a Le'Veon Bell stop and then burst. He's more of a build-up speed, long strider, bend to the edge, not cut to the edge kind of runner. Almost kind of like a Darren McFadden, but better, if that makes sense. And McFadden, when he was in his prime, was great, but just he was always hurt, so he never really had a prime. But anyway, in terms of Derrick in specifics, I think when you look at the Matt LaFleur offense, it's a lot of outside zone. It comes from the Shanahan coaching tree, so it really suits his skill set. And I think they're going to make a very concerted effort to get him to the edges in this scheme, which is where he's most comfortable. And if he is cutting back, because it's a zone run and it's not a gap run, he doesn't necessarily have to have that LaShawn McCoy, put your foot in the ground and instantly get backside kind of cut. He can get away with his more, subtly bend to the backside kind of style. So it suits him, in terms of scheme versus physical skill set, it suits him. And then when they really want to do gap runs and kind of bang around inside the tackles, that's what Dion Lewis is there for. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Dion Lewis is their short yardage back, simply because if you're running like a lead up the gut, you want a guy who, if the blocking isn't perfect, you want a guy who can kind of stop, start, wait for something to open up, and then cut through and get up there. And that's what Lewis is better at. So I think Henry, at the very least, is going to be the first and second down back. And if it is a short yardage third down, Lewis will probably be in there. If it's a long yardage third down, it depends on what the play call is. If it's a screen, I wouldn't be surprised if it's Henry. If it's 4 receivers out in a passing concept and they want the back in as a 6-man protection, it'll probably be Lewis as well. So I guess the short answer is, snap count-wise, probably 60% Henry, 40% Lewis, but they're going to be doing entirely different things. And it's going to depend on the game plan from week to week. But I'm not worried about Henry whatsoever, because I think his physical skill set fits the offense, and I think Lewis's physical skill set fits the things that Henry can't do. So they work together really well. Overall, the offense, I think, is going to be a lot better, especially if they sign Dez. I know that's kind of rumored out there, but overall, I really like the offense. I really like both of their running backs, and I'm not hesitating to take either one of them.
Lucas, I want to ask you, in terms of draft value and stuff like that, Henry is like third round, early third round. He's got Mixon, McKinnon, McCaffrey before him in standard, later in the third round in PPR. What's your take on this backfield?
I agree a lot with what Brett said. I am slightly more hesitant on the offense as a whole. I would like to see them click a little bit more. Using the eye test, what I saw last year is they just didn't quite have it together. So I do expect better. They have a little bit more solidified of roles. They have Derrick Henry coming in. I think they're going to get him the touches. He had several big runs at the very end of games that kind of padded his numbers. He got his touchdowns. He only had like 10 receptions last year, I think. So I think that I would expect them to use Dion Lewis more in the passing game, just because traditionally that's how I personally view Dion Lewis. And I think Derrick Henry will end up as an RB2 at the end of the year. I don't expect there are people that are coming out that really expect him to take that leap forward and kind of be that fringe elite. Like not elite, they're not putting him in that category with DJ and all these other guys, but kind of in that second tier. And I really don't quite see him there. I see him more in that third tier, that guy that is probably going to get you 8 to 15 points a game, which is going to be solid as your RB2. I don't know that I would be happy having Derrick Henry as my RB1 for the entire season. But I definitely expect him to get the snap count over Dion Lewis, and expect him to get a lot of the first and second down work.
Where do you have him ranked?
He's someone that I would be very comfortable taking him end of the third. Probably end of the third is where I would be really comfortable owning him at.
That's interesting. I got him like solid second round pick, and I don't know what his ADP is right now. That might be a little bit high, but just looking at the offense he's in and the skill set he has, I mean, then again, I also have like 10 running backs rated as first round picks, so it's a very thick year for running back. But
it is a very, very thick year on running back, and part of it is, for me, the reason I have him where he is because of I saw him run last year, and I just wasn't impressed. I didn't see him really turning the quarter often. And then another thing is that I'm not high on Mariota. I like him. I think he's pretty efficient, but I think that Mariota is holding that offense back, or they're not unleashing Mariota and allowing him to go to his full potential. So maybe he takes that step forward, but he just seemed very hesitant and tentative to me. So I'm not expecting a ton of yardage from that offense as a whole, which I think will hurt Derrick Henry some.
I think the Mariota question is interesting. And again, I go back to Matt LaFleur, who has a history of being on staffs that elevate quarterbacks above what they were doing before.
Yep.
Whether it was in 2009, when he was part of the staff that got Matt Schaub to lead the league in passing yardage. He was on the staff that helped Matt Ryan be an MVP. He was on the staff last year that helped Jared Goff take a major step forward.
Yep.
Everywhere he's gone in his career, even Washington, he was there during RG3's tremendous rookie year, and he also was part of the staff that was developing Kirk Cousins before he went to LA. So, everywhere he's been, there's been good quarterbacks. And I don't necessarily think it's just because they were drafted as good quarterbacks. I think he's had a hand in developing them. And the scheme in particular, again, whether it's Gary Kubiak, who he was with in Houston, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, they all run similar systems, and they all stem from Mike Shanahan. It's a very quarterback-friendly system, and by that I mean, when they're running outside zone with Derrick Henry, that opens up bootlegs, where it's literally just like a high-low progression read off a boot, which Mariota, I think, was third in the NFL last year in efficiency on. So I think if you're building an offense around that concept, around a running back that's good in zone and you're running a lot of zone, and you have a quarterback that's really good on bootlegs and they're running a lot of bootlegs, and they're in an offense that has success with quarterbacks of similar skill sets that have done that in the past, to me, just history-wise, it makes a lot of sense for me for the Titans offense to be a lot better, simply because for the last 10 years, this same offensive coordinator has done that, in terms of improving offenses and making them better and implementing this exact system. So maybe I'm a little bit too high on the Titans, but I've seen the system enough as a Texans fan. I've seen this coach enough, and I've seen the Titans enough as a guy who watches a lot of AFC South football that I think it's just, I got a gut feeling it's going to work a lot.
You're convincing me some. I am coming around some. So maybe I move Henry to middle of the third round just based on the other. So actually, here's a question for you. Another running back that a lot of people are very high on is McKinnon out in San Francisco. Would you rather have McKinnon or Henry?
Again, it's another. I still got to do a little bit more film study on McKinnon. I've only watched 3 games, but right now, in terms of my round 2 running backs, I've got Kareem Hunt, and then Jordan Howard, and then Derrick Henry, and then Joe Mixon, and then Jerick McKinnon, all in the second round.
See, I like that because McKinnon is someone that everyone else is much higher on than I am. I would take Henry before McKinnon also. McKinnon is another guy. I have Henry and McKinnon back-to-back, and McKinnon is someone that I have at the very end of the third, beginning of the fourth. I'm not sold on him yet. I am not sold on McKinnon. People are taking him middle of the second round, and I would be so uncomfortable with McKinnon as my first running back.
See, if I was in like that first 3 or 4 picks where I'm getting Zeke or Bell or David Johnson or Gurley,
yep.
I know I've got a stud, and I'm in the back end of the second, and I know I've got the turn at the start of the third where I can get a good wide receiver. I'm okay with taking McKinnon there because I know I've at least got an RB1, and I'm taking a really high upside RB2. But if I'm one of the contingent that's taken Hopkins or Antonio Brown in the first round, and McKinnon's the first running back I'm taking in the second round, that's a little bit different. So it's all about context in that situation where, again, I recognize he's got super high upside. He's a very good athlete, very good receiver. And just looking at how Shanahan has used Tevin Coleman in the past, their skill sets are very comparable. If you look at it that way, where it's like, oh, I'm basically just drafting Tevin Coleman, yeah, it's probably worth the pick. But it's all about context when you're drafting. And if he's your first running back you're taking and you're throwing all the chips on him, it's a little bit harder for me to swallow than throwing the chips on Derrick Henry, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it is. And one other name I'm going to throw out there that I feel like everybody is sleeping on, that I think like this guy is actually someone that I feel like could end the season as a top 8 running back, that I would take before both of those guys, that no one else seems to agree with me, is Alex Collins. That guy, he just dances. What do you dislike about Alex Collins? Because he just has that X factor to me, that ability to make people miss.
See, I when I look at him on tape, I see the exact opposite. I see a guy who, he's got some power when he's up to speed, and it might take him a while to get up to speed, but if you get him to the edge, he can do some damage. But in terms of like acceleration and pure cutting ability, I don't really see it. He got the start over Buck Allen because Buck Allen's just bad. And Kenneth Dixon, his combination of just not staying healthy and just never really getting comfortable. Like, Kenneth Dixon's way more physically talented than Alex Collins. He's just not there. It's hard to get the job if you're not in the building.
Yep.
But Collins, like, to me, is a guy where it's, if they had a pick to spare in the last 2 running back heavy draft classes, I think they would have already replaced him. I think they just had bigger needs, whether it was quarterback or pass rusher, or linebacker, any of that kind of stuff. Like, I feel like the only reason why they didn't replace Collins is just lack of draft capital. But when I watch him on tape, like, I'll say I have a rate of as a 6th round pick, so it's not like I say he's bad. I don't get behind the hype that he's like lock him in for running back 2, because I think he's very dependent on the blocks being there in front of him to get up to speed, because he really doesn't do a lot of damage until he's up to speed. That's when you see the power and you see him breaking tackles and stuff like that. But if you penetrate early, let's say you're running inside zone and you penetrate early on that inside tackle, like he's done. He's done. Whereas guys like true top 8 running backs like David Johnson or Gurley or something like that, they can put their foot in the ground and cut back and use the burst to kind of burn those pursuit angles from the backside and still get something out of it. Whereas Collins, it's like, at least when I see him on tape, once you penetrate and once you disrupt the flow of the play, like it's pretty much over with him. So I don't know. That's kind of more of a difference of opinion type thing. Like I can understand taking him high just because he's going to get volume. There's nobody else there to take it from him. But upside-wise, I feel like his ceiling is limited just because of his athletic skill set.
This is one of those takes that I like to hear, because it's someone who just absolutely sees the world, this sector of the world differently than what I viewed last year. To me, whenever I saw him get the ball, I was excited that he got the ball because I was waiting, I was anticipating what he was going to do with it. And I felt like there were several times last year where the defense was just getting penetration and able to get to Alex Collins before he was able to get any forward momentum, which really hampered what he was able to do in that offense as a whole. But he's still someone that he's one of my guys that I'm going to end up with quite often, because if he is there on the 3-4 turn for me, I'm going to take him every single time. If he is my 2nd or 3rd running back, I'm going to be pretty happy.
Let me give you one play.
Completely wrong, but this is one of those risks that I am willing to take. And I also hope that Joe Flacco is no longer the quarterback shortly through this part of this season, and we get to see some rookie action there.
Lamar Jackson starting would help Collins out, but let me give you one play. I don't know if you have Game Pass or not, or if your listeners have Game Pass. Go to the 2017 season, Week 4 against the Steelers, 3rd quarter, 7 minutes and 5 seconds left in the 3rd quarter. I'm at my Alex Collins notes right now. So Baltimore's running a pin and pull. They spring Collins to the edge. Really good cut block. Takes out 2 pursuers, 2 for 1. Really good block. Again, if the blocking's there and he's getting up to speed, he's fine. He does break 1 tackle, but as he's cutting back on the boundary, because there's a DB there, he doesn't really have the juice to re-accelerate once he slows down and he gets caught from behind. Whereas if it was David Johnson or Gurley, when they're cutting back, they've got that extra twitch. They've got the juice that they can immediately re-accelerate in 3 steps and get away. Where with Collins, it's like once you're up to speed, you better stay up to speed or you're screwed. And it was a 50-yard run. I'll give you that. It looks great in the stat sheet. But that lack of acceleration on this play, and again, you can watch it on Game Pass if you want to, that's the difference between a 50-yard run and a 66-yard touchdown, which is like a 7.6 point swing in most leagues. And that's huge. That can determine who wins or loses. So again, he'll get the 50-yard run, but the ceiling to me is limited because he just doesn't have the juice to finish where it really counts.
I hope that our listeners appreciate what just happened right there. Brett just pulled out the exact game, the exact quarter, and 7 minutes and 5 seconds into this game against the Steelers. I just hope that they appreciate what just happened, because Brett is one of the best out there at this.
I was hoping that he didn't have his Alex Collins notes open and he just knew that in his head, because that would have been really impressive. Like Rain Man kind of stuff. But I'm glad you guys are bringing up these running backs who are sort of similar ADP. In a PPR mocks, I've seen a lot of people go wide receiver. If they're toward the end, the late end of the rounds, they might get like a Julio and Michael Thomas, and then they're going to be looking at these guys as their running back 1s and 2s. Another one in that group is Jay Ajayi, similar ADP to Henry. But a lot of people have felt let down by Jay Ajayi in the past couple of years. He showed some spark in Philly, but they have a bunch of guys to contribute there. So it's looking like the dreaded RBBC. And Brett, you did a video about him in Miami, and a lot of it was about the offensive line, the health of that line being a significant part of his success or failure. So how do you look at the Philly offensive line, and can Jay Ajayi have a season with more big games than he's had in the past with the system that he's in now.
Yeah, that video is funny because it's an example of both me being right and wrong at the exact same time. Because I made the point in that video that when you're drafting a running back to be your RB1, I had him as like a top 5 pick or whatever. When you're drafting a running back as your RB1, you're really drafting his offensive line. You can look at Gurley, you can look at Bell, you can look at any top running back. If the blocking isn't there, they're not going to produce. And so the Ajayi video was almost halfway a Mike Pouncey video because they ran a zone system, and the zone system is entirely dependent on the success of the center. If you have a good center, you're going to have a good zone run game. Just look at Atlanta, the difference between pre-Alex Mack and post-Alex Mack. He's the thing that makes that offense work, at least on the ground. So when I made the Ajayi video, I said, you're drafting him as long as Mike Pouncey is healthy. And what's ironic is Mike Pouncey was healthy, but he was just bad. He was uncharacteristically terrible compared to the previous years that we had seen him play when he was healthy. And I don't know if it's the hip issue finally catching up to him. I have no idea. But he was playing, he just wasn't playing well. And as a result, Ajayi's productivity took a nosedive. Fast forward to going to Philly when he gets traded, they've got an all-pro center, at least all-pro caliber center in Jason Kelce. Productivity skyrockets. Efficiency skyrockets. So he wasn't getting as many carries as I hoped, but on a per-carry basis, he was getting like 3 extra yards per carry behind Jason Kelce, just because, again, zone run games are – the success of a zone run game is determined by the center. Philly had a great center. Miami didn't. And Ajayi, unfortunately, succeeded and failed based on that.
Let's stay on Philly for a second. You also did a great video about Philadelphia and the RPO. And people say that it's a copycat league. So which teams do you see in terms of staff, in terms of players, are most equipped this year that might adopt that system, could maybe become, high caliber offensive like the Philadelphia Eagles? Does there anybody stand out to you team-wise this year?
Well, I know for a fact that Bill O'Brien is basically redoing the entire Texans offense. He's throwing the system they used to have out the window, and they're implementing all new stuff to complement Deshaun Watson. A lot of the concepts he's getting from Dabo at Clemson. He's getting stuff that Deshaun likes, just in terms of calls that he likes to get certain looks, especially against cover 3 and cover 1, because that's what they see a lot in this division. So they're redoing their offense both to suit their quarterback and to attack the defenses they know they have to face in their division. And it's interesting because the game plan from week to week is going to be entirely different, because Indy, for instance, is kind of reverting to a Tampa 2 system this year. Jacksonville runs that Seattle-style cover 3, cover 1. Tennessee, under Vrabel, is running kind of a mix of everything. So you're going to see totally different game plans from week to week in Houston, but I think the constant that we are going to see is the RPO, because they have a quarterback that is comfortable running. He's run it his entire life. He had a lot of success with it at Clemson, and now I think he's going to have a lot of success with it in Houston. And what that means is you're going to see a lot of kind of inside zone looks with the backside defender not blocked, or with the backside linebacker not blocked, and whoever is in the slot, whether it be Braxton Miller, Kiki QT, maybe they put DeAndre Hopkins in the slot and put QT outside. Whoever's in the slot on the weak side of the play is going to get a ton of targets off this RPO. And conversely, I also think that Deshaun Watson is going to get a lot of QB keeps out the back door off this RPO. They're going to run it the exact same way that Philly runs it, but they're going to have a more mobile quarterback, and I think they're going to have a better wide receiver to run it. Like when Philly ran it, they did it with Zach Ertz because that was their best slot receiver, was Zach Ertz. Whereas with Houston, I think they're going to run it with Hopkins. So just keep an eye on for that. I think you're going to see it a lot, probably 5 or 6 times a game, somewhere between like the 30 to 40 yard line, just to get them into the red zone. But you're going to see that a lot. And it's going to be a lot of cheap completions, a lot of cheap rushing yards. But tell you what, fantasy-wise, that adds up. It definitely adds up. So just keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, I don't lose points in my league for cheap. So I'm good with that. You guys both watch college football. This is kind of off topic, but I was just curious, have you seen anything in college football in the last couple of years that you think might be the next big idea offensively that's used in the NFL?
It's tough to say because there's so many different systems. I do think that we're seeing a lot more trap runs, which, traps, it was most of the time like a trap run, like you'll see those brought out a lot against a really like penetrating front. So like against the Rams under Wade Phillips, they get caught by trap runs all the times because, again, they're asking their defensive line to get upfield as fast as possible, so they get more vulnerable to it. But I think as you're seeing a lot of the fronts around the NFL move to that one gap style that Wade's been running forever, you're going to see more trap runs used because we've seen what it can do against one gap fronts in college, which are really popular. Hell, God, even Carolina ran it last year on like 3rd and 11 or something like that with Christian McCaffrey. They ran a trap run on 3rd down, and it worked. I mean, they converted. I think it was against the Niners, like in the 4th quarter, they ran a trap run on 3rd down just because, they know, hey, they're coming after us. We know they're going to penetrate. Let's run it. And it worked. So I think that's something we're going to see a lot. In terms of the passing game, I think we're already so inundated with the bubble screens and the RPOs and all that kind of stuff. Like I don't think we're going to see it anymore, like on a percentage basis than we have in the last couple of years, but I don't think it's going to go away, if that means anything.
Lucas, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I'm sitting here taking it all in.
Okay. All right, fair enough. We talk a little bit about Miami's offensive line with the Giants. What do you think of them this year? What do you guys think of the O-line in Miami? Do you think Drake, Gore? Who's going to be successful running back in Miami this year, if any of them?
Ugh, man. I'm not really buying the Miami backfield. Like, I know they brought in Daniel Kilgore to replace Pouncey, so it's not like their center position is going to get any worse. In fact, Kilgore might even be an upgrade if Pouncey continues to play like he did last year, because now he's in San Diego. But, like, I'm not super high on Jesse Davis. Josh Sitton was a good pickup at left guard. Tunsil's obviously at least a good left tackle to me. So, like, the left side of the line, I think it's fine. The right side of the line, I have a lot of questions. So it's tough to evaluate because the success or failure of a running back might come down to something as simple as, do they get the right play call behind the right side of the line at the right time to break off that big run?
Right.
So I don't know if you can bank on consistency. It doesn't mean they won't be productive, but I don't think you can bank on consistency when you can only trust half the offensive line. It might just come down to a fluke play here and there to get that yardage. I don't hate Kenyon Drake as a player. Frank Gore is obviously never going to retire. He's going to play till he's 50. And Kalen Ballage, I think, is a physical specimen at running back. I think he's probably going to end up being their short yardage and goal line back and probably vulture a lot of touchdowns. So, like, I don't hate the backfield talent-wise. I just don't trust it because I can't trust the offensive line yet. And maybe that'll change a few weeks into the season once I see Jesse Davis play. Like, if he can handle himself against, like, I think they play Houston week 2 or week 3. If he can handle himself against Watt and Clowney and Merciless and not get completely embarrassed, I might buy in and try to trade for one of them. But it's hard for me to go into the year expecting big production out of them when I haven't seen the line perform yet.
I agree with a lot of what he just said. The line does scare me a little bit. I'm just not sure how well that they're going to be able to protect. And I'm really curious about Tannehill, whether he's going to come out slinging or whether he's going to come out gun shy. I do like Kenyon Drake as a player. I think he's a pretty good, pretty talented player. I think that he is going to be somebody that unfortunately is going to have games where game flow, he's going to give you 4 or 5 points. But I also think that he's going to have games where he's going to score a couple touchdowns and put up over 100 yards. You're going to have those from him. So he's another guy that, like you said, Brett, you're not going to want to rely on based on consistency week to week. But he's a guy, if he was your flex, I'm a guy who I love to have a running back as my flex. And he's a guy that there's going to be some weeks that he's really going to put you over the top and give you an added bonus. Frank Gore is someone who's going to me, he's going to be a little bit more consistent, but I think that he's going to finish around 3.5 yards a carry with this offense by the end of the year. He's going to get some touchdowns, but Frank Gore is not somebody that I'm going to want to depend on a week-to-week basis.
I'm not drafting him.
Yeah,
I'm just there's a lot of other running backs out there that I would rather take a shot on. Here's one that you're probably going to like quite a bit, Brett. Donta Foreman. This guy, I think by the end of the year becomes the Texans' lead running back, and I think he's a lot better than Lamar Miller.
As long as the Achilles is okay and his recovery is okay, I think he probably could have taken over last year if he didn't get hurt.
Maybe after that game. Game where he was averaging 6+ yards a carry and ripped off that big run down the right-hand side. I was going to all of my leagues and seeing if he was owned or not right then during that play.
Yeah, I think as long as his Achilles is okay, by like week 6, he's going to be the guy. Not that Lamar Miller won't get any carries. He is going to get carries, but I think it's going to go from like a 70-30 split to like a 50-50 split by week 6. And then by the end of the year, it might even go the other way.
That's right. And we know that the Houston Texans are not opposed to making big changes really quick into the season. When did we see Deshaun Watson? Halftime. Game 1.
Yeah. Bill O'Brien does not screw around. He's going to pull the trigger. As soon as he thinks making a switch will help the offense, he will make the switch and not think twice about it. And I think, again, like you said, he was really close to making that switch before Foreman got hurt. Also, when you look at the run game statistically, when Deshaun was there versus after he got hurt, night and day. Because the addition of a mobile quarterback, kind of like we were talking about with Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, the addition of a mobile quarterback into the equation, a rising tide lifts all boats. So when you factor that in, and defenses have to be cognizant of Watson leaking out the backside on these RPOs, that's going to help Miller and it's going to help Foreman.
Absolutely.
So no matter what, they're going to be productive. It's just the question is which one.
Yeah, and it's so amazing to watch because when Deshaun is in, and DeAndre Hopkins, this guy is just such a freak talent. It's so fun to watch. And him and Deshaun Watson, they are just on the same page. They understand each other. So not only do you have a quarterback that's able to throw to an elite wide receiver who can literally catch anything, you have that quarterback who can throw, who can also run and rip off a 50-yard run down the center of the field like he did against Cincinnati Bengals and make 7 different players miss him and get it in the end zone. As if that weren't enough, you have to worry about the running back who can peel off around the side, and someone as quick and as skilled as Deonta Foreman, for example, that's just a nightmare for a team to have to worry about. And the fact of the matter is that running back is far from the first thing that the defense is worrying about with the weapons that they have.
It's funny, when like in that Seattle game, when everybody was healthy, it was all systems go, and they were lighting up the Legion of Boom. They were lighting up Seattle defense in Seattle in like Watson's 3rd ever career start, something like that. I'm on Twitter just like losing my mind, just like this is amazing. Like we have a quarterback. And my timeline just gets flooded by all these Clemson fans going like, why are you surprised? Have you not watched Clemson at all the last 3 years?
That's right.
You watched him against Bama 2 years in a row. You watched him against Florida State. You watched him against Louisville. You watched him against the best defenses in college football. And he's murdering everyone. Why are you surprised? And I'll admit, like I thought Deshaun Watson was a 2nd-round draft pick. Like I thought he was a better version of Alex Smith. I had some deep ball concerns. Like I knew he was going to be good. I didn't think he was going to be that good.
Yep.
And hats off to the Clemson fans because they saw it coming. They definitely saw it coming.
So a little off topic here, but does Lamar Jackson's play style remind you of all of Deshaun Watson?
Mobility-wise, yes, but way more mobile.
Yep.
Passing-wise, he has the same accuracy concerns I had with Watson, but to a greater degree. So he's like the extreme of Watson on both ends.
Yeah.
Both as a passer and as a runner. And Watson, like he had plenty of issues as a passer. He made up for it just because his weapons were so insane that he could get away with his mistakes and he could still be productive. Whereas the Ravens don't have that same cushion that Watson had. But Watson had his warts. But Jackson can still make a big difference himself. And he'll still have those same warts that Watson has to a higher degree, but I think he'll make even more plays with his feet than Watson did. So if you're trying to lead to the point of is he draftable, of course. Every mobile rookie quarterback is draftable. Going back to RG3 in 2012, there's always one, or actually Cam Newton the year before that, there's always one hyper-mobile rookie quarterback that carries a team to a championship in fantasy. It happens every single year. So, yes, he is draftable, but don't expect him to put up the same numbers as Watson because his issues are amplified compared to Watson's issues, if that makes sense.
I agree with that. And I also was a little surprised that the Patriots did not take Lamar Jackson when they were in need of the quarterback as much as they were, but neither here nor there.
Well, I got no problem with this becoming a Houston Texans focused show. I like how he keeps jumping back over there to my team and to Brett's team.
Gotta plug my guys.
Absolutely. But I think I just want to put a bow on Deshaun Watson and the Texans real quick. Everybody's saying he has to regress. and he's being mock drafted right now, right behind Aaron Rodgers as the number 2 quarterback overall. What do you think? Is this a mistake, or is he worth that kind of draft capital?
That's what's funny. It's like, is there some rule I don't know about that he has to regret? Is this something that's?
That's what I'm saying. Everybody says there's no way he can do it, but why not?
But nobody's saying why, and they're just like, oh, it's just because sophomore slump, because
exactly.
Defense are going to adjust. It's just because. It's like, what?
I mean, that's just not a thing. My only concern is that he comes back completely healthy from this injury. If he comes back completely healthy, the guy over his last 4 games averaged something like 300 yards passing, 4 touchdowns a game. He put up an average of like 29 points a game his last 4 games before the injury.
He's going to be MVP.
And 2 of those teams were Kansas City and Seattle, and at Seattle. Like, that's when he got hurt. He was already over 400 yards passing with 4 touchdowns.
I'll say this. If Bill O'Brien made 2 changes to different play calls at the end of the Patriots game and at the end of the Seahawks game, he had both of those teams on the ropes, needed 1 yard in both of those games to ice them. And he called runs up the gut with Lamar Miller both times. They got stopped both times, rather than just letting his hot rookie quarterback get him a first down.
Yeah.
Because Deshaun Watson was annihilating both of those defenses. And if he changed those 2 play calls, Deshaun Watson, in 2 of his first 3 starts in the National Football League, with no good offensive line to speak of, and a really terrible defense that was banged up and had no secondary talent whatsoever, that Deshaun Watson would have gone into Seattle and beat Russell Wilson. He would have gone into Foxborough and beat Tom Brady. This is the same Russell Wilson who was on pace to throw for, I think, 42 touchdowns as a rookie. Keep in mind the all-time single-season record for a rookie quarterback is like 26, and it's held by both Russell Wilson and Peyton Manning. So he was shattering every single record ever. He was annihilating every team that was in front of him, except, strangely enough, the Cincinnati Bengals. He was doing all of this unprecedented stuff we've never seen before. So why are we going to assume that this unprecedented rookie quarterback talent is going to regress to the mean on evidence that has already been invalidated throughout his entire rookie? Like, we've never seen this kind of rookie quarterback performance before, so why are we expecting to see a sophomore quarterback performance that we've seen with other guys? Like, if he's already violating all these expectations, why are we still having expectations? You know,
there's no logic to me. I try to be very pragmatic with how I analyze these things, and there's no reason to me as to why that would be, other than can he come back full from this injury? And that is the only thing. In the Cincinnati game, that was his first start, which also happened to be his first road game. I'm not one to make excuses. You got to compete, but just throwing that out there, Deshaun Watson should come back and be huge. I'm not someone to take a quarterback before the 4th round. If Deshaun fell to me in the 4th round, I would absolutely snag him. I don't expect him to fall that late in any of my leagues, but I do not expect a regression from Deshaun Watson.
Absolutely not. I mean, he's my QB too, only behind Rodgers.
I like the way you attack that. Why would we have any expectations when the guy's already shattered them? It's a great point. People don't think about that. I want to talk about one more rookie coming in here, another running back. I mean, it's a lot of running back talk today. But, Brett, you did a video on Saquon Barkley. You compared him to LaDainian Tomlinson. And I want to ask, because people have their doubts about him as well. Never seen him in an NFL game, Giants offensive line, blah, 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 Eli, this, that, and the other thing. All these excuses and reasons why he is not worth a first-round fantasy draft pick. But put you in the situation where you have, say, pick 1 through 6. Obviously, we know the first 4 running backs, probably Antonio Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, are in that group for most people. Does Barkley fit into that top 6? Is he exciting enough that you want to draft him his first year to anchor your fantasy team?
Well, right now I have him as my 6th ranked running back. Not necessarily 6th-ranked overall player, but 6th-ranked running back.
Okay.
The only guys I have ahead of him are Bell, Zeke, Johnson, Gurley, and Fournette. So I think very highly of him as a talent. I think in terms of, especially in a PPR, these are PPR rankings, I think in a PPR he has more value just because he's such a good pass catcher. I think we're going to see him on wheel routes roasting people all year long. So I think he is worth that investment because he is so freakishly talented. Whether or not he will end up as the RB6, I'm not sure yet because right behind him I've got guys like Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, Melvin Gordon, Devontae Freeman. There's also, Kareem Hunt and Jordan Howard, like I said, in round 2.
Right.
So like there's a lot of running backs that could all make cases for finishing that high. But I don't feel like it's taking a risk to take him in the middle of the first round as the RB6 because I know how talented he is, because I know how good of a receiver he is, how good of a runner he is. Like I know the offensive line isn't the greatest in New York, but it's not nearly as bad as it was last year. And there's so many other weapons around him between Odell and Ingram and Sterling Shepard. Like he's going to be seeing 2 high looks all game, every game. So, if you're looking at 6 in the box and they're nickel looks and he's got 5 on 6 in terms of blocking up front, that means that his one responsibility is to shake that one linebacker in space and then run 20 yards. That's literally all he did at Penn State, was have his one guy in the hole. That's his responsibility. Shake him, get yards. And he is phenomenal at that. So if you're giving him a light box, he's going to get 100 yards a game just because of that. Like, you have to put the safety in the box and outnumber him, or you're never going to tackle him. And that kind of side discussion, when you do have to drop that safety down, it opens up everything else for everybody else on the offense. So I'm really high on the Giants offense, specifically because Barkley demands that safety down in the box. And as soon as they back off and they play too high, it's over. It's over. He's going to feast. So I'm big on him. I understand why people aren't. They're worried about rookie running backs with decent or below average offensive lines. Like, I get it, but he's not your average rookie running back. Let's just be real here. So I'm not going to treat him like your average rookie running back.
Right. There's usually 1, possibly 2 that come out every single year. We've seen it. Todd Gurley, Zeke. We've seen these guys that come out. I'm right on pace with you. I personally have Dalvin Cook ahead of him, but we're splitting hairs here with that. Barkley's going to come out and he's going to have a big year for all of the reasons that you just mentioned. I'm a Cowboys fan. I don't like the Giants. From a pragmatic standpoint, Eli Manning is good enough to hit Odell Beckham, to hit Ingram, to hit Sterling Shepard, who I think is one of the most underrated wide receivers in the league, specifically because he's overshadowed by Odell Beckham. Barkley is going to have a big year. They can't cover all of these offensive weapons. They have one of the potentially most powerful offenses in the league, top 5, based on all of these weapons.
Well, I'm just saying, you know why the Cowboys drafted Leighton Vander Esch? It's because he's a linebacker that can cover.
Yeah.
As soon as Barkley went to the Giants, that's when they're like, oh crap.
Yep.
we got to get a linebacker that can cover.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to see these guys twice a year. Let's go.
Yeah.
Lucas, is there, I put the list of rookie running backs in the show notes. Is there one guy that pops out to you besides Barkley that you think could really blow up this year, become a fantasy superstar?
One that I agree with Brett that we mentioned before the show was Kerryon Johnson. I think Detroit is another really powerful offense. Another guy that I think is being drafted way too late for his value is Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones had some incredible plays last year, and I think that he will break out. Maybe not break out because he already had a really strong year last year, but I think he will be a borderline wide receiver 1 by the end of this year. And Kerryon Johnson, I think, is somebody that no one is talking about that I think could have a really, really big year. And if I had to pick a second one, I think Royce Freeman. Royce Freeman could come out and have a really big year.
Yeah, I'm agreed on all counts. Those are the 2 rookies that I'm targeting over every other rookie. Kerryon first. Like, I know this is overdrafting by several rounds, but I'm taking Kerryon Johnson in the end of the 4th round right now. And it's this when I do that, I've had people tell me the exact same thing that they told me when I took Alvin Kamara in the end of the 5th last year. Of he's in a committee, he's stuck behind 2 other guys. What the hell are you doing? Well, by the end of the year, Alvin Kamara in the end of the 5th round was a pretty darn big value. So, like, if the talent is there, the talent is there. And they invested a hell of a lot more in Kerryon Johnson than the Saints did in Kamara.
Yes,
and
they did.
I think also the competition for Johnson is less than it was for Kamara. Like, he had Adrian Peterson and Mark Ingram ahead of him. Kerryon Johnson has maybe LeGarrette Blount and Theo Riddick on 3rd downs. Like, the dude's going to get touches, and he's going to get touches a lot earlier than Kamara did. And I think talent-wise, it's a different kind of talent than Kamara. They're different styles, but, like, grade-wise, they're not that far off. Kamara had a higher overall grade, but Johnson I had as a high 2nd-round pick. He's stylistically, to me, I'm not saying he is these guys, but stylistically, he's kind of a mix between Le'Veon Bell and David Johnson, where he's got that kind of stop behind the line and wait for the seam to open up kind of patience that you see in Bell. He does that all the time, but the jump cut is pure David Johnson. The dude's like a 41-inch vertical. Like, when he stops and jumps to the backside, it is insane. Like, the dude can move. So I'm really buying him in the Lions offense. And as an extension of that, I'm buying Stafford. Because when's the last time he had an offensive line with this much talent? Because keep in mind, they also drafted Frank Ragnow to be their left guard, who kicked the crap out of Alabama when he was in Arkansas. So he's going to be their left guard. You got Kerryon Johnson as their new lead back. You still got Theo Riddick as the 3rd down back. You still got LeGarrette Blount as the goal line back. You've got Jones and Galladay and Golden Tate in the slot. You got Luke Wilson as their tight end, who's decent. Not saying he's good, but he's decent. Like, when's the last time that Matt Stafford had this much good talent around him? Like, the Lions offense is going to be good. Really good.
Yes, it is. And this is just a little tidbit, Brett, for you. Another reason why I may be as high on Alex Collins as I am is I'm a graduate of the University of Arkansas. So
there it is.
Saw him play a little bit. Yeah.
There it is.
That's
so you know all about Frank Ragnow then.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you hit on Darren McFadden earlier, I almost jumped in there to say a few things, but he was a lot of fun to watch. He was a lot of fun to watch back in college too.
And, and if McFadden stayed healthy, he could have been tremendous. But his prime was like 2 years because he couldn't stay healthy. So I love Darren McFadden. As a talent, I thought he was spectacular, but man, the dude was just made of soft tissue injuries.
Yeah, that's right. He was brittle. He just was. He's just a brittle player, and it's unfortunate because he had a lot of talent, and he very much had a mind for the game. He was able to see the plays happening in front of him, but alas, he wasn't as sturdy as we might have hoped.
I think it's a really good rookie running back class. I think we're going to get a lot of rookie contributors this year between Johnson, Freeman, Darius Geis, potentially Rashad Penny, potentially Ronald Jones, Nick Chubb. Like there's a lot of names that are going to end up being drafted. The only question is how high.
Which ones are going to hit? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which ones are going to hit? Because it really is very difficult to predict who is going to transition from college to the NFL. Usually we have that one or two that is abundantly apparent, like we have with Saquon Barkley. And the others, we use our best guess, but at the end of the day, we don't, nothing is 100.
Well, everybody wants the next Kareem Hunt.
Well, and everybody wants the next Kamara as well. And we were talking about him before the show. With Ingram missing 4 games right now for the season, beginning of the season, what's your take on Kamara? You think he's going to take over that backfield, or do you think they're going to keep using him the same and just work with another banger between the tackles for the first part of the season?
I definitely think he's going to take over. Like I think after 4 weeks, it's going to be hard to go back to Ingram.
Well, and the thing is, like, it seems like Mark Ingram's always in the doghouse for one reason or another, and he loses his job for a couple of days. And
I think it's more like, it used to be where Mark Ingram would get 15, 17 carries a game, Kamara would get 10. I think this year it's going to be the opposite. I think Kamara gets 15, 17 carries, and Ingram gets 10. And situationally, it's going to be the same. You're going to see Ingram in on short yardage, you're going to see him in on goal line, but overall volume of touches, I think Kamara gets 20-plus every week, whether it's catches or runs, and Ingram gets somewhere around 12.
Yeah, I'm very much in agreement with the total amount of touches. I think that they scheme often for plays to get the ball in Kamara's hands where he's catching the ball. I think that when Ingram comes back, they're very different players, and Kamara is not someone that you want taking a beating. He's not really built for that. He's not someone that you really want to take a lot of hits. So I think that they are a duo that works very, very well together. And I kind of feel like Ingram is essential for that, to just come in and help wear down the defense and kind of put that beating on them, to kind of put them on their heels a little bit. I do think Kamara gets more touches. I expect Kamara to get 12 rushes and 6 to 7, 8 receptions a game. Maybe tack on a couple depending on game flow. I do expect him to get more touches than Ingram, but I do think that it's important for Ingram to get his touches as well.
Where people are going to get really frustrated is in games where the Saints are up by more than 2 touchdowns. If Kamara's got 95 yards,
yep,
and you want those bonus points if he hits 100, if you're in that kind of league, guess what? You're not getting 100 because in the fourth quarter the ball's going to Ingram.
That's right.
That's where you're going to be
That's
frustrated.
Right.
Is
when
they're winning by too much, it's an Ingram game. If it's close, Kamara's getting 150 yards.
If they're losing.
And if they're losing, Kamara's getting 200 yards.
Yes, if they are losing, that boy, he is touching the ball. It's going to be the Michael Thomas and the Alvin Kamara show.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
So it is game script dependent, which means if you're playing daily is where it's at. Because if you look at, if it's New Orleans, Green Bay on Sunday night, I don't care how much Kamara costs. I'm playing him because I know he's going to get 25 touches and he's going to get 1 billion yards. But if they're playing like the Bucks without Jameis Winston in the first 3 weeks, guess what? That's an Ingram game. Oh wait, no, he's suspended. Crap. That's going to be an interesting game then.
Yep.
Because they're going to be up by a lot, but they won't have their closer. Huh.
Yep. I am very, very interested to see how the Saints operate without Ingram in those first 4 games, to see how they operate and use Kamara and see how many touches that he's getting. That's
going to be a fascinating case study because I think they are going to win by a lot.
Yep.
But they won't have their closer, so how do they treat Kamara? That's actually going to be an interesting thing for the season going forward, and if you're in Dynasty, watch that game very closely.
Yeah, those 4. Those 4 games.
If they use Kamara as the closer and he's successful and they're comfortable with it, then Ingram has 0 value.
That's right. You should be very, very worried. If they keep Kamara in and he's getting 25 touches in those games, and it shows you that the coaches aren't worried about him getting injured and about his usage and using him too much, Ingram, he's in trouble.
But it's got to be 25 effective touches. If it's the fourth quarter and they're up by 7 points and he's only getting 2.5 yards a carry in that fourth quarter, that opens up the door for Ingram to take away carries. But if he's still getting 4 or 5 yards a carry, Ingram's done.
But see, that's the beautiful thing, though, is Alvin Kamara. I don't know how many times we saw him turn what looked like he was about to get tackled in the backfield or for like a 2-yard gain and 70 yards down the field.
So we'll see how it is. But that might be a thing where it's like how you watch, like in your own leagues, whatever your format is, whether dynasty, redraft, PPR, standard, whatever it is, how you watch those first 4 games contextually within the Saints offense and knowing the game script they're operating under, the scenarios they're under, their opponents. Watch those games because how you treat trades, whether you're trading for or trading away either of those 2 running backs, how you watch those games and how you handle those 2 trades will win you your league. Guarantee you. Because that's the most sensitive running back situation in the league to me.
All right. I know we've got limited time here, Brett. I want to hit 2 more. It seems like it just turned into the running back show, which I'm fine with. It just means we're going to have you on again to talk about wide receivers and another show to talk about tight ends and quarterbacks. So you're booked for the next 3 weeks at least somehow.
Sounds good to me.
But let me hit 2 divisional rival running backs for the Saints. Talk about C.J. Anderson and Peyton Barber. Both guys are going pretty late in mock drafts. It's like my off-season personal project to find a C.J. Anderson fan. Nobody on our team, on our crew here really likes him. Dirty Jobs is really down on him. Talk to me about these 2 guys. Do you see any value in them for this season?
That's it. I'm actually doing a video on Christian McCaffrey right now, so I've been studying a little bit of the Panthers offense. I like if it's like the 13th round, I might take him just as my RB6 or whatever. Right. Because you never know if somebody's going to get hurt or anything like that. Like, I get it, but people say, oh, he's their short yardage back. No, he's not. Cam is. Cam's their short yardage back. Cam's their goal line back. And Christian McCaffrey is their threat in the edge, space weapon kind of back. You know, if it's a crack toss, that's going to McCaffrey. It's not going to Anderson. If it's outside zone, that's going to McCaffrey. If it's like a lead up the gut, or if it's inside zone, yeah, you might get 8 or 9 of those a game from C.J. Anderson, but he's not the first and second down back. That's still McCaffrey in a non-traditional sense. And if it is a 3rd and 1, or if it is a 4th and goal on the half-yard line, I still don't think Anderson's getting that ball. It's still going to be Cam. So how much value does he really have if he's not even the goal line back on his own team, if he's not the 3rd down back on his own team, because that's going to be McCaffrey, if he's not the early down back on his own team, because that's still going to be McCaffrey. You know, he is the change of pace back, but without the benefits that a usual change of pace back has. He's literally just there to make sure that McCaffrey doesn't die from overuse. That's the only reason he's there. And Cameron Artis-Payne as well.
CJ, I'm sorry, buddy. I may have to give up on you. That's the most reasons anyone's ever given me. The most, points, because Dirty Job's just like, I don't like him. I don't know. He shows up for 2 games, disappears, and shows up at the end of the season. But, it might be a lost cause for Anderson. Talk to me about Peyton Barber real quick.
He's on the Bucks, right?
Yeah. That doesn't bode well.
I always get him and Cameron Artis-Payne confused because they're both Auburn guys. Okay. I always forget which one's which, but they run literally exactly the same, so it's almost irrelevant what team they're on. He's probably going to lose his job to Ronald Jones by like week 4.
All right.
Not that he's like terrible, but he's just a guy to me. Whereas Ronald Jones, I think, is more explosive. He's got quicker feet. I think in the gap run scheme they have, you need a running back that can actually jump cut from hole to hole when it's not blocked correctly initially, which to me is Ronald Jones. I think he's much better in that role. He can't catch, like in terms of Ronald Jones, like he's not a receiver, but that's why they have Jaquiz Rogers and that's why they have Charles Sims. So to me, Jones is going to be like within the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season, Jones is going to be their first and second down back. And then Rogers and Sims are going to be in on 3rd down. And Barber, I don't even know if he's going to be on the team. Wow. It depends if they want to carry 4 running backs or not, but he's not guaranteed a roster spot. Again, he's just like C.J. Anderson. He's kind of a guy without a role. Like I can't envision him getting 9 or 10 carries a game because Ronald Jones is going to end up getting 13 or 14 of them. Rogers and Sims are going to end up getting 5 or 6 of them, and that's most of the lion's shares of carries in that Bucs offense. So I don't know. He's a guy I'm avoiding, just like all the others. Yeah,
I want to touch on the Bucs real quick because the news item that we skipped in the beginning of the show, Jameis Winston's going to miss the first 3 games due to suspension. So, Lucas, any thoughts on how this affects Mike Evans, Cameron Brate, O.J. Howard, that team in general for the first couple of games?
It's just really tough for me because going back to last season, I had very, very high expectations of Tampa Bay. I was really looking forward to their season. That hurricane hit. They lost their bye, and it just seemed like they were never able to get into the swing of things. In one of my leagues, I had Jameis Winston, and I was so frustrated with it. They kept playing him when he was not healthy, and it just completely messed up everything about that team. It's kind of feels like this is just 2017 carried over into 2018. This is just they haven't the flow, the energy. To me, everything is still going the same way. I'm not very excited to have any of these guys. Personally, I think that Brate is going to be the biggest beneficiary of this. O.J. Howard is a huge talent. Mike Evans, that guy is so good at football. I watched him at Texas A&M. He is why Johnny Manziel got the hype that he did get. It's not because Johnny Manziel was that good. It's because Mike Evans was able to catch anything that was thrown into him, even in double coverage. But I'm not very excited to have anybody on that team. And I'm not sure that Mike Evans is going to produce like we're expecting him to. And I think Cameron Brate is going to be a mediocre tight end for you that you can play on a week-to-week basis.
It's unfortunate because like O.J. Howard was the highest grade for a tight end that I've given since Rob Gronkowski. And in fact, including injury, he actually had a higher grade than Rob Gronkowski to me. He was easily one of the 5 best players in that draft class.
Yep.
And it's unfortunate that A, he's stuck behind Brate.
Yes.
B, he has that quarterback situation. And C, he's on a team that doesn't really feature the tight end like I think they should. Like, if you put O.J. Howard year 2 in San Diego, he would outperform Hunter Henry. I feel like physically, if you put O.J. Howard in Philly, I know this sounds sacrilege, he would outperform Zach Ertz.
Put him in Dallas.
Put him in Dallas.
Put
him literally anywhere else, and he would do well. Like, can you imagine him in Jacksonville running up the seam off play action? As bad as Blake Bortles is, that dude would get 1,000 yards. Like, he is a phenomenally talented tight end that unfortunately is not really rosterable right now unless you're in a dynasty league. And it's nothing against Cameron Brate. Look, I like Cameron Brate, but he's just not O.J. Howard. And Ryan Fitzpatrick, God bless him. You know, as a Texans fan, I love Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's one of my favorite, not players, but just people in the league. I love Ryan Fitzpatrick as a person. But the dude completely ignores tight ends. He's always completely ignored tight ends. If you're a wide receiver, especially a big-bodied wide receiver, he will feed you the ball over and over and over again, which is why I'm a little bit more optimistic about Mike Evans than you. You know, you look at Brandon Marshall, you look at DeAndre Hopkins, you look at in Buffalo, like going back to even the Bengals and the Rams, like anytime he had a receiver over 6'2", they were getting the ball because that's just what Ryan Fitzpatrick does. But if you're a tight end, you might as well not exist because he will not throw the ball to tight ends. I don't know why. I don't know what it is that he has against the position, but he has historically never paid attention to that position. So especially when he's starting and not Jameis Winston, I will never play Cameron Brate, and I will never, ever play O.J. Howard. And if Jameis Winston comes back and he's productive and, you know, I guess you can say he earns a starter's position again, I might consider playing them. But for now, pretty much everyone on that offense except for Mike Evans is totally dead to me. And maybe Ronald Jones, but that's about it.
I want to just close it out real quick, Brett. I just want to just a couple sleeper questions because we are Sleeper Wire. So give me a name or two at most of who you have as a sleeper for fantasy this year. Any position, any player, I don't care.
Ooh, let me dig into my rankings right here.
Yeah, go like third or fourth page in, man. Get in there.
Oh, here's one. Christian Kirk, Arizona.
All right.
I think by the end of the year, like I know Larry Fitzgerald is their slot receiver right now, but Christian Kirk has been billed as like the slot receiver of the next 10 years for Arizona. And I think by the end of the year, it's going to be really hard for them to keep him off the field. I think they're going to move Larry back out to X, and I think they're going to put Kirk in the slot. Starting around like week 10 or 11, by then Josh Rosen's probably going to be starting because Sam Bradford's knees are made of glass. I think by then also Arizona is going to be airing it out a lot. They're going to be getting in shootouts. And that's the point where I think Christian Kirk is getting 7 or 8 targets a game and probably 5 or 6 catches a game as a slot receiver. His end of the season totals are probably not going to be impressive, but I think in the second half of the year, he is absolutely going to be rosterable in a PPR as your flex because I think he's too good of a slot receiver, too good of a route runner. His hands are too good for them to just keep him off the field. I think they would sooner move Larry Fitzgerald than totally keep him off the field. So that's at least receiver-wise one that I really like.
All right. Give me a guy that you think is criminally overvalued right now. Just a guy that's actually being drafted. Not a sleeper per se, but just somebody who's going way too high for your taste.
Ooh, that's a good one because there's a lot. Probably Jordy, I would say. I got him as a 6th-round pick, but like when I've been doing mocks on like, you know, the ESPN and stuff like that, people are taking Jordy in like the 4th round to be their wide receiver too. And I'm like, why?
That's really early.
Like,
yeah.
I would never take him before the 6th as like my wide receiver 3. And even then, I'll probably end up moving him down. Like, that was my initial ranking. I'm not done with him yet. But, like, you know, in Green Bay, I would take him in the 2nd or 3rd. Because at least you knew that he had that rapport with Rodgers and he was going to catch a million back shoulder balls because that's just what they did there. But, like, in Oakland, as the number 2 behind Amari, I can't justify taking him any higher than late 6th. And I'm seeing him go in late 4, which is just insane to me. Absolutely insane. And by the end of the process, by like August, I'll probably have him down at like round 7 or 8.
Just out of curiosity, where do you have Amari Cooper at?
Cooper, I've got late 3.
Lucas, you like that? I know you have feelings about Amari Cooper.
Yeah, I actually like Derek Carr quite a bit, and that's the only reason why I would be able to draft Amari Cooper there. I'm not a big Amari Cooper fan. He has just showed over the last couple of seasons that, you know, it kind of has a little bit of the prima donna syndrome, I feel like. I just don't feel like he gets out there and he's really competing for the ball. Like, he's really working. I know he had a couple big games last season, but he was one of the biggest letdowns for me at any position in 2017.
Yeah, hell, that whole offense was a letdown, truth be told.
Yep, people were really high on Marshawn Lynch. I was not one of them.
Oh, hell no. I was way off the Lynch wagon last year. If you were asking me that question last year, it'd be Marshawn Lynch. He was way overdrafted.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, a guy that I'm a little worried about this year is Allen Robinson. I know a lot of people really like Mitchell Trubisky, but, you know, Allen Robinson is coming off an ACL tear. But even before that, 2 years ago, he was awful. He was awful. He was not running his route. He was not completing his routes. He was not going up for 50-50 balls. 3 years ago, he was great. Guess who else was great that year? Allen Hurns. Both of them, I think, finished as wide receiver ones. I think Allen Robinson has a lot of talent, but for the last 2 years, he has just been absolute garbage. So I love Trey Burton for Chicago. Do not like Allen Robinson. I think that he's not going to produce third-round value, which is where I'm seeing him go in a lot of drafts. Third or early fourth round.
I've got him just ahead of Amari in the third. For me in the third round, it's Alshon, Diggs, Allen Robinson, Amari.
See, now and where do you have Marvin Jones?
I've got him
before or after them?
After.
Yeah, I think Marvin Jones outperforms every single one of those guys that you just mentioned.
I've got Marvin in the fourth, just behind T.Y. Hilton and Doug Baldwin.
Yep, and T.Y., man, that's another one. I just can't trust Andrew Luck. I know he says he feels no pain, but I don't trust him.
He's pain-free.
I don't trust him. I watched the interview, looked at his face. Did not. Nope. Big flags. I don't believe you. I do not believe you.
To me, it's like, I don't care if he feels pain or not. What's the risk of re-injury?
Yeah.
You know?
And the fact that it took that long, though, 2 years, like, I've had a shoulder injury, and it still hurts. I injured it today, actually.
When's the last time you ever heard somebody say, I used to have a bad shoulder?
No, that's lifetime. That does not go away. It does not go away, and it's in your throwing shoulder. I'm sorry. Nope. Don't take Andrew Luck as early as he's going either. Like, don't believe him.
Actually, that's probably a better answer than Jordy in terms of overdrafted. It's Andrew Luck.
Yeah. Yep.
I think people are hip to that, though. Like, he's going to rise probably before the end of draft, or before the beginning of draft, like official draft season. But right now, I mean, he's going late in mocks that I've been doing. But I do mocks with guys from SleeperBot and you know, people that wait on quarterback and are getting Rivers and Stafford in like the 12th and 13th round. So, you know, in general, I guess Luck's maybe going a little bit too early, but at least in the leagues that I'm looking at, he's way down there. I mean, he's quarterback 2 for a lot of teams who already grabbed somebody in the 9th or 10th. So I don't know. Yeah,
I would only take him as a QB2. I would not take him as my QB1 at all.
Yeah.
No way.
That's right. I just why your season is shot. If you rely on him and you only take one quarterback, which a lot of people only take one quarterback, and you're going to rely to pick something up off the waivers, like, you are risking your entire season on a shoulder, on an injured shoulder from a guy who said he was going to play last year. Like, no.
For the record, we don't even know if Baker Mayfield's going to start, and I still have him and Tyrod over Andrew Luck.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes, I absolutely love that. Like, Baker Mayfield, this guy, he's going to end up being the guy who is playing at the time that the playoffs roll around, the fantasy playoffs roll around. This is going to be the guy. And draft strategy from Sleeper Wire LBB, it doesn't matter if you're undefeated going into the playoffs. What matters is that you make the playoffs with the best team. You want Baker Mayfield on your team. Take him late. Have him on your team. Let him sit the bench all season. This guy could come out slinging. And the Browns, they may be honestly competing for a playoff spot. I know I said on our previous episode that the over-under was they were going to win 6 games, which I got a lot of flack for. They could win more than 6 games. They are going to compete.
Let's put it this way. The playoff defenses, in terms of fantasy playoff defenses that the Browns are playing against, it's Carolina, at home in Cleveland, and then on the road in Denver. Keep in mind that Aqib Talib is no longer there. And then they're hosting the Bengals. And Carolina, their defensive line, a little bit worrisome. I get that, especially since Joe Thomas is retired. Denver, pass rush, a little bit worrisome. I'll give you that. Bengals, secondary, I think is pretty good since they drafted Jesse Bates. But are any of those defenses on paper good enough that make you think, nah, I don't want to play Josh Gordon. I don't want to play Jarvis Landry. I don't want to play Carlos Hyde. I don't want to play Baker Mayfield. No. I would play all of them against all of those defenses. Like, they don't scare me.
The only one in there that I'm not completely sold on is Carlos Hyde.
Even Duke Johnson. Like, I would definitely play Duke Johnson against any of those. So, like,
the wide receivers,
going to make a lot of people a lot of money.
Absolutely. Oh, I absolutely agree. That guy just has a different tier. He sets a different level of competition to win. And he's someone who he gets a lot of flack, and people don't believe. They just don't believe in him. And he very much feels like he has something to prove. And a talented person that feels like they have a goal, they have something to strive for, watch out.
The current Carolina corners, by the way, this is the first round of the fantasy playoffs for most people. Baker Mayfield and Josh Gordon are going to be playing against a secondary in Carolina that consists of James Bradbury, old as dirt Mike Adams, Colin Jones, Kayvon Seymour, and Ross Cockrell. Play them. Play all of them. I don't care which Brown you have on your team, play all of them. They will make you so much money. So much money.
Brett, you've been a fantastic guest, man. We got to have you back on again. There's so much to talk about. You know so much by looking at all this film. When is your next video on YouTube coming out, and what's it about?
Next one's going to be either on Christian McCaffrey or maybe the Panthers' run game as a whole. I haven't really decided yet. I'm still kind of going through the film to kind of let me... I usually wait for the film to kind of tell me what it's about before I write it. So it's going to be something Panthers offense related, ideally situated around Christian McCaffrey. It'll be out, I think, sometime next week. Kind of depends on how fast I can get it all done. But either this week or potentially the Monday after that is when this is going to be released. So I'm looking forward to it. I still haven't made my final conclusions yet, but I think I know where it's going, and I think you guys are going to like it a lot.
Cool. And are there any other projects that you're working on that you can talk about that aren't top secret?
Yeah, I'm working on a project. If any of your listeners also happen to listen to the Christopher Harris football podcast, because I know a lot of people listen to fantasy podcasts all day long, I'm working on a project with him where we basically teach. It's called Film Don't Lie University, where we teach people how to identify good running backs on film in terms of how to identify which rookies are going to be going off. Which bounce-back candidates you should invest in, like when I invested in Gurley at the top of the second round last year, or how to identify a flash in the pan, like, say, potentially Alex Collins. So I think a lot of people are going to be interested in that just so they can kind of apply it to their own leagues and figure out which risks they want to take and which ones they don't. And then I've got a lot more film room episodes coming out in the lead-up to the season, so it's a busy July and a busy August for me.
All right, you can find him on YouTube. Look up his name, Brett Kollmann, BrettKollmann. Watch his videos on YouTube. You're going to love him. He's on Twitter. You can chat with him there, at Brett Kollmann. And you can support his efforts. He's got a Patreon page. Just search for Brett Kollmann or click the links in his video descriptions to get there and help him out. And that is it for the show today. Thank you all for listening. As we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we've got a great lineup for the Sleepwire Pro-Am this year. Instead of doing a raffle this year, we actually decided to give out automatic entries to be in the Pro-Am. A one-time $30 donation to Rob's GoFundMe gets you an automatic entry into the Pro-Am. So that is how you play against industry professionals and other listeners of the Sleepwire show in the Sleepwire Pro-Am. Also, if you want to just do $25, you can do that. That'll get you into a listener league. Each of us is going to host a listener league with a very exciting signed, certified jersey as a prize from Pristine Auction. So $30 gets you into the Pro-Am, $25 gets you into the Listener League. But right now, if you donate $50, you get into the Pro-Am and the Listener League of your choice. So that's a $5 savings. You can do that now. Go to the GoFundMe.com/RobJR. Make your donation, and we'll get in touch with you in just a few weeks. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you'd like to ask us questions or just give us the business, catch us on Twitter at Sleepwire Show. You can get Lucas at Sleepwire LBB or me at Toledo Radio on the Sleepwire app, Sleepwire, SW Steve, and Sleepwire LBB. And on the Fantasy Life app, find the Sleepwire chat and look for Sleepwire and SW Steve. We also have a brand new Facebook group, Sleepwire Fantasy Football Club in Facebook groups. Join that. It's a good group of guys. And a lot of people are doing mock drafts, so they're posting their mock draft info if you're interested in getting into that. Thank you again to our guest, Brett Kollmann, from Lucas, and me, producer Steve. Thanks again for listening. We'll catch you next show.